They laughed at me, whispered behind my back, and painted me as someone I was not. But I waited. I watched. And when the truth finally came out, it destroyed him entirely, and no one could deny it. I never thought a family member could ruin my life so completely. It started innocently enough, just small whispers, tiny half-truths, but over time, they became a roar that swallowed me whole. My cousin, the one I grew up playing with, laughing with, became the architect of my public humiliation. I remember the day it all began. My mother had called me into the living room, her face pale, hands trembling slightly as she handed me a letter she said had arrived that morning. It was from a distant relative I barely knew, someone who claimed to know things about me. Things that were not true, but they were twisted cleverly enough that anyone reading would doubt me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some cruel prank. I laughed it off, but then I noticed a change. The way my father looked at me when visitors came over. The subtle hesitation in my brother's voice when he mentioned my name in casual conversation. Even friends at work began avoiding me, sending sideways glances, murmuring to each other. It was as though someone had drawn a line between who I was and who everyone believed I was. And that someone was my cousin. He was charming, always had been. Parents loved him, teachers adored him, and everyone in the neighborhood thought he was a model citizen. I, on the other hand, had been quietly ambitious, always focused on building my career, my reputation, my life. But suddenly, all that hard work seemed meaningless. Because my cousin had a talent for manipulation, a way of twisting reality just enough to make me look like the villain. He would casually drop lies at family gatherings, small but pointed, suggesting I was dishonest, lazy, or worse. People believed him, and I couldn't prove otherwise without seeming defensive, desperate. I remember the first major fallout. My cousin had spread a rumor about me at a company event. It was subtle, almost undetectable to the casual observer, but enough that my boss started questioning my reliability. I was blindsided. Emails went unanswered, projects delayed. Suddenly, my career momentum screeched to a halt. I confronted him privately once, asking why he would do such a thing. He smiled, a slow, deliberate smile, and said, "People need to know the truth. You think you're better than everyone else, but you're not." That was it. No remorse, no explanation. Just a smug satisfaction that I was suffering because of his lies. I tried reasoning with my family, but it was hopeless. My father, who had always been my anchor, began to doubt me. "Maybe he has a point," he said one night, after another awkward dinner where my cousin had been charming the guests while I sat in silence. My mother tried to support me, but even she was torn. Family loyalty is complicated, and when a liar knows exactly which strings to pull, even the closest people can be swayed. My brother stopped talking to me for a week after my cousin claimed I had embarrassed the family at a distant relative's wedding. The lie was ridiculous, but my brother didn't ask questions. He just assumed it was true. Months turned into years. I watched my life unravel slowly, like a movie in which I was trapped but couldn't change the script. Friends disappeared. Promotions slipped through my fingers. Even casual acquaintances started keeping their distance. I spent nights lying awake, trying to figure out how to fight back without stooping to his level. But every time I tried to expose him, he had anticipated it, weaving his lies into new narratives that made me look like the one overreacting. People believed him because he was charismatic, and he always had someone willing to validate his claims. And yet, I didn't give up. I didn't lash out or seek revenge immediately. I knew that truth has a way of surfacing if you are patient enough. I focused on my work quietly, gathering evidence, documenting everything. Every lie he told, every manipulation, every person he deceived, I noted it all. I started small, reaching out discreetly to colleagues and family members, planting subtle reminders of facts, past events, anything that could one day prove my innocence. It was painstaking, frustrating, and often lonely. But I knew patience was my weapon. I remember the night I decided to stop pretending everything was fine. I had just received a call from an old friend who hadn't spoken to me in years. "Are you really like he says?" they asked hesitantly. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. Even those I trusted, Even those who had known me for decades had begun to question my character. That was the turning point. I realized that fighting him head-on would only give him more ammunition. I had to wait. I had to let time work in my favor, like a patient hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. During those 2 years, I changed. Not outwardly, but inwardly. I became strategic, methodical, calculating. I learned how to read people better, how to anticipate their reactions, how to plant seeds without drawing attention to myself. I cultivated relationships with people my cousin had manipulated or alienated. Slowly, they started trusting me again once they realized the inconsistencies in his stories. It was subtle, almost invisible to outsiders, but every small victory felt like a step closer to the moment I had been waiting for. I also documented everything meticulously. Every lie he told, every smear, every manipulation. I saved messages, recordings, photographs, anything that could one day prove his deceit. I was careful not to act on it prematurely, because even a single misstep could ruin everything. I became a silent observer of my own life, a strategist in a long game, all while he continued his charade, unaware that the walls he was building around himself were made of the very lies that would one day collapse. And then, finally, the moment came. It was a family gathering, nothing out of the ordinary, yet perfectly orchestrated. I had invited people who had been directly affected by my cousin's lies, friends, colleagues, and family members who had once doubted me. I stayed calm, composed, while he moved around the room, the same confident smile plastered on his face, oblivious to what was coming. One by one, people shared their experiences, corroborated facts, revealed inconsistencies, and piece by piece, the truth started to emerge. My cousin's web of lies began to unravel in real time. The look on his face was unforgettable. It started as confusion, then disbelief, and finally, pure panic. He tried to interrupt, tried to twist the narrative back in his favor, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. Years of deception came crashing down around him. Family members who had once doubted me now looked at him with the same skepticism they had once reserved for me. My father's eyes met mine across the room, and I finally saw the pride that had been buried under years of manipulation. My mother reached out, squeezed my hand, a silent apology in her gesture. My brother's smile was a mixture of relief and admiration. He had destroyed my reputation, yes, but in his arrogance, he had overlooked one thing. Patience and truth are more powerful than charisma and deceit. 2 years of careful planning, quiet resilience, and relentless focus had turned the tide. I didn't gloat, I didn't rub it in, but the satisfaction was deep and unshakable. I had waited, and now the truth was undeniable. After that night, life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, but it was forever changed. My cousin's once impeccable reputation was in tatters. People who had once admired him avoided him now. Their respect evaporated as the full extent of his deception became clear. Some tried to defend him at first, claiming I had orchestrated the entire reveal, but it didn't matter. The evidence spoke for itself. Messages, emails, witnesses, inconsistencies, and stories all pointed to him. The charisma that had once protected him couldn't withstand the weight of truth. My family, initially fractured by his lies, began to heal. My father apologized more openly than he ever had, admitting that he had doubted me unfairly. My mother's embrace carried the weight of years of worry and guilt. My brother, who had once looked at me with suspicion, now looked at me with respect and awe. Even distant relatives who had been uncertain reached out with congratulations and apologies. It was a restoration of faith, not just in me, but in the idea that truth eventually prevails. Rebuilding my career was another challenge, but easier now that my integrity was unquestioned. I approached my work with renewed vigor, more focused and more confident than ever. Opportunities one had missed in the past returned, and people who had distanced themselves now sought to reconnect. I was cautious, however. The experience had taught me that trust is fragile and appearances can be deceiving. I never underestimated the importance of evidence and foresight again. I also realized the importance of documenting life, of keeping records of critical events, communications, and interactions. My 2 years of careful observation and collection of evidence had been the foundation of my victory. It wasn't just revenge, it was a lesson in preparation and resilience. Every lie my cousin had told, every manipulation he had attempted, was countered with patience and strategy. And in the end, the truth was unstoppable. As for my cousin, the fall was devastating. He tried to rebuild, tried to charm his way back into people's trust, but the damage was irreversible. Friends abandoned him, colleagues doubted him, and family members looked at him with suspicion and wariness. The very qualities that had once made him untouchable, his charm, his confidence, his ability to manipulate, were now his undoing. People began sharing stories they had never spoken of before, moments where he had lied, deceived, or manipulated. The more they spoke, the more his credibility crumbled. It was a stark reminder that actions have consequences and arrogance often blinds people to the inevitable. My cousin had spent years weaving a narrative in which he was untouchable, but patience and truth proved stronger than any lie. He realized, perhaps too late, that manipulation only works until someone decides to stop playing by your rules. I also found a sense of closure I hadn't expected. For years, I had carried the weight of humiliation and betrayal. There were nights when I doubted myself, questioned my worth, and wondered if the world would ever see the truth. But now, with the truth revealed, that burden lifted. I could finally move forward without resentment poisoning my thoughts. The satisfaction wasn't in seeing him suffer. It was in reclaiming my life, my reputation, and my dignity. In the aftermath, I began mentoring younger colleagues and family members, teaching them the importance of integrity, patience, and resilience. I share my experience not as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson in strategy and the power of truth. People listened, inspired not by the downfall of another, but by the idea that one could endure, adapt, and ultimately triumph over deceit without losing their own character in the process. My relationship with my family strengthened in ways I hadn't anticipated. We became more transparent with each other, more communicative, and more supportive. Trust, once broken, had been rebuilt on a foundation stronger than before. My father and mother often spoke of how proud they were, and my brother and I forged an even closer bond, united not just by blood but by shared experience and understanding. Looking back, I realized that those 2 years of silence, patience, and observation were not just about exposing my cousin. They were about proving something to myself, that I could endure injustice without compromising my principles, that I could wait, plan, and execute with precision, and that ultimately the truth, no matter how delayed, has the power to prevail. The ordeal taught me resilience, strategy, and the value of measured action. And my cousin? He is a shadow of the man he once was. People avoid him, and even the smallest attempts at manipulation are met with skepticism. His reputation, once a fortress, crumbled because it was built on lies. He learned the hard way that destroying someone else's life comes with consequences. In that time, patience and truth are far more powerful than charm and deceit. I share this story because it's a testament to patience, strategy, and integrity. No matter how powerful a liar seems, no matter how persuasive their charm, truth has a way of emerging. The world may doubt you, friends may desert you, and family may question you. But if you remain steadfast, gather your evidence, and act with precision, justice will ultimately prevail. So, to anyone who feels wronged, humiliated, or undermined, remember this: wait, observe, and plan. Don't rush to expose or retaliate. The power of truth, when wielded with patience and strategy, is unstoppable. One day, the lies will unravel, and those who sought to destroy you will be left facing the consequences of their own deceit. And when that day comes, the satisfaction is unlike anything else, because it is complete, undeniable, and deserved. If you've ever been wronged, betrayed, or humiliated, don't act out of anger. Stay patient, gather the truth, and let it speak for itself. The power of truth is stronger than any lie, and when it finally emerges, it can completely transform your life and expose the deceit of those who thought they were untouchable.